Welcome to World Affairs in Context, everyone. It's great to have you back. As the European Union is on track to militarize, is it indeed planning to confiscate its citizens' unused savings to boost the capabilities of its military-industrial complex? As I previously mentioned, Ursula von der Leyen's plan to rearm Europe heavily relies on private capital. She needs private capital to boost the European military-industrial complex. Several days ago, I uploaded a video on this shocking proposal, and today I'm going to add more details and more clarity. I know many of you are very concerned, and rightfully so, and judging by your comments on my previous video, you're shocked. So am I. A recently published article claims that the European Union Commission unveiled a plan to channel 10 trillion euros of citizen savings into strategic investments. These strategic investments are, of course, military assets, industrial infrastructure to produce artillery, ammunition, weapons, and such. If it does sound Orwellian to you, it clearly is quite surreal to see something like this even being discussed in a region of the world that supposedly respects private property and supposedly respects human rights, supposedly. The article further explains, the European Commission wants to boost Europe's economy by redirecting the savings of citizens across the EU towards investments to stay competitive on the global stage. The European Commission unveiled a plan to channel up to 10 trillion euros in bank deposits across the bloc into much-needed strategic investments. The European Union is desperate to secure funding for its warmongering ambitions due to the fact that its debt levels are relatively high and its economies have been tanking. The EU is indeed exploring ways to mobilize private capital, but this is a very nuanced approach, and I will walk you through how it will work. According to a recent report by a former president of the European Central Bank and Italian PM Mario Draghi, the EU will need at least 750 to 800 billion euros per year. This is a major investment push on an annual basis by 2030 to become competitive against global players such as the United States and China. That is a very high bar to achieve, and European citizens will have to give up some things for the EU leaders to achieve their goals, to achieve their ambitions. Social spending is going to be first on that chopping block, so definitely prepare for that. And this is why it is now looking beyond traditional options, such as increasing debt levels and raising taxes or levies on foreign goods. It's still going to tap into those resources, of course, but because the EU anticipates that the United States may reduce its financial and military engagement in NATO, the EU is quite desperate, so it needs funding. What is the new plan? The EU has no choice but to go after private capital. Will it confiscate your savings? Well, it is indeed true that the EU has proven to be quite lawless when it comes to pursuing its interests, both financial interests and military goals. But let's just remind ourselves that it is using the interest earned on Russian sovereign assets held in European banks to fund the conflict in Ukraine, to continue funding Zelensky's regime. However, the EU cannot simply confiscate your deposits, your savings, your investments. So this is not what the European Union is suggesting to do here. Your private savings will not be confiscated or withdrawn from your bank accounts. However, there are reasons to be concerned. The European Commission is creating a new platform to mobilize private owners' funds for investment in EU military-industrial complex industries, which will be implemented under an EU program, the Investment and Savings Union. The EU plans to create a savings and investment union. It sounds great, but it's very questionable. So they're going to create that union for your savings and your investments. Here's how it will work. The EU Savings and Investment Union will allow European banks and other financial institutions, such as pension funds, insurance companies, and broker-dealers, to invest in equity. This is a very risky idea because the EU plans to remove certain regulatory and supervisory barriers for cross-border transactions. So effectively, they're saying, you know what, we need money, and we're going to remove all these regulatory barriers that were previously in place to safeguard against major investment losses. And now we're going to create this new union to effectively attract private investments that are not going to be secured, that are not going to be safeguarded as we would like them to be, but so be it. So they just want access to funds, even if it means that there is a higher chance for investors to lose their money, which in this case could be your investments and your savings. This is a major red flag. The EU Commission is launching a savings and investment union through which EU citizens can invest in capital markets. The EU is after 70%, so the majority, or 10 trillion euros, of the total household savings in the entire EU. They want that money to be invested in private companies producing weapons for war with China or with Russia or both. The EU does indicate here citizens who wish to invest will have an opportunity to do so. So these investments are by no means obligatory, and nobody will confiscate savings to fund the military machine, at least not yet. However, here's why this is a red flag. As a former bank auditor, to me, this means that there will be new companies formed specifically to produce military equipment. Why new? Well, because Rheinmetall will not risk its name, will not risk its reputation. It has trillions of euros in backlogs. Its CEO now expects profits to increase 20 to 30%, as I mentioned last week in the video. So they need a new shell company or companies, easily created, easily dissolved once they go bankrupt, to attract investments and to produce military equipment. Because the EU now softens its regulatory environment to attract private capital, the company could become publicly traded without having to adhere to high standards. The EU will offer higher returns if you invest in these companies. But remember, if there is a higher return, there's always a higher associated risk with that investment. High returns, high risks. As an investor, the EU tells you to invest your 10 trillion euros of savings in these companies to boost Europe's military machine. If this company goes bankrupt or is later bought, sold, or somehow disappears, since the regulatory environment has been simplified, your savings and your investments will disappear with that company. This is indeed a very intricate approach towards using your savings to fund their warmongering goals. They don't need to confiscate your savings. They would rather you voluntarily give it up. They would rather you voluntarily share your savings with them. It is very similar to investing in any publicly traded company, of course. There is a risk-reward trade-off. However, when the EU Commission says we are rearming and we really need cash for war, and to get that cash, we're going to reduce regulatory requirements, we're going to soften our regulatory environment in general, it is a sign that they're looking for a loophole, and there's likely no safety net for an average person who spent his or her life working 95 jobs or 2 jobs to save. Additionally, who would be naive enough to invest in a new fund created under the pretense of going to war that is effectively a tool? That fund will become a tool used to prepare for war. Why would you invest in it? If there is a conflict that they're preparing for, why exactly would you want to invest in their military ambitions that always bring profits to the military-industrial complex without fail, and nothing but death and suffering to an average person? So while your savings will not be confiscated, watch out for more intricate and advanced ideas that will achieve just that. Allow easy access to your bank accounts and to your pockets. If you haven't already, please subscribe to worldaffairsandcontext.com. I look forward to seeing you there. There will be new projects and new content there soon. I'm actively working on it right now. Today, thank you so much for joining me. I truly appreciate it. Remember to show your support. Like, subscribe, and share. It goes a long way. And I will see you back here tomorrow. Bye for now.